My name is Brian William Butler, known in the fire service as Bill Butler, and at the time of the riot situation, I was a Deputy Assistant Chief Officer, the Commander of the Brigade's B Division. Okay, in the 1980s, I worked for the London Fire Brigade, and at that time I was the Commander of the Brigade's B Division, with the headquarters based at Clapham. Right, the onset of the riots was, I became aware on the Saturday evening, that would be about 5:30, that an appliance fire engine had been ordered into Brixton area to cars on fire, and the ordering slip notified the crew attending that there was civil disorder in Bean. My area was the B Division. The B Division was, my headquarters was based at Clapham. Yet the area covered 11 fire stations. Roughly, on the northern side, the boundary was the River Thames. Southerly, it went out as far as almost Forest Hill. To the east, it went as far as the B Division comprised 11 fire stations. Brixton, Clapham, Lambeth being just 3 of those stations. I was in charge of the B Division of London Fire Brigade, but as a duty assistant chief officer, there's normally only 2 on duty at weekends, and I was in charge of roughly the south area of London, i.e. from the River Thames right out to the Greater London Council border. It kicked off Saturday the 11th of April 1981 at about 17:30 hours, i.e. 5:30 in the afternoon. I was notified that Croydon Control, who was the mobilising control for my area, had ordered an appliance from Westnord Fire Station into Brixton to cars alight. The ordering slip also indicated to the officer in charge there was civil disorder in Bean. That is why Croydon Control notified myself, because of the civil disorder element of it. In any division of the London Fire Brigade, there's always someone in command of that division, plus there'll be a number of senior officers responsible for overall fire cover within the area. The 2 officers I ordered into Brixton when I became aware there was civil disorder in Bean was a Division Officer Butler, my namesake, and an ADO Titchband. I dispatched them to the incident, and then I became aware that a second call had been received to cars alight in Brixton, once again emphasising there was civil disorder in Bean. It was on that second message I decided to attend the incident myself and proceeded to Brixton. In my provided car, the fire service provided car. Right, at that stage, whilst en route to Brixton, I overheard a radio message from my namesake Division Officer Butler that he had withdrawn all fire appliances, fire engines, from the area because the crews are being attacked by hostile crowds. He ordered those to proceed and to meet him at a rendezvous point, which is the Orange Coach Station, as it was at the time, which is on the corner of Salton Road. I went to his established rendezvous point, Salton Road. We stayed there for some little while, not very long at all. There was many more calls being received to the Brixton area, and after we had been there about 3/4 of an hour to an hour, I became aware that the the rioters were proceeding towards our rendezvous point. I then ordered all crews to report to a secondary rendezvous point, which was in Jebb Avenue, which is about 3/4 of a mile away from the affected area. At that stage, I also ordered Croydon Mobilising Control to stop sending appliances into calls to Brixton area. Instead, I would take over the mobilising function at my forward control point. That, I believe, is the first time that procedure has ever been adopted in the London Fire Brigade, and I believe throughout the British Fire Service, to take the mobilising function away from the Croydon control and to order appliances from a rendezvous point nearer the incident. I must say that I knew Brixton very, very well. I spent the first 27 years of my life there. I was very familiar with the thoroughfares throughout Brixton. That is why I thought it essential that only I, who had an understanding of what was actually happening in those thoroughfares, could mobilise appliances to any particular thoroughfare. I knew what was happening in any particular thoroughfare, generally. Not specifically, but generally. And I knew the areas where it was safe for crews to proceed to. I also knew the best routes, the safest routes they could take to that particular location. Only those things could be judged out on the ground, as I was out on the ground, and not by a remote mobilising control based in Croydon. But what's happening there is the riots were initially centred on the Rowton Road, Atlantic Road area, which I was fully aware of. That is the area where cars were overturned initially and set alight. It was localised to that particular area at that stage. It wasn't a matter of going around alleyways because there was not that many alleyways throughout the area involved. I proceeded partially by fire car and partly by foot. But of course at that stage, because of the height of the riots, one could not probe too far into the area. One could only sort of circumvent the outskirts of it. Right. Any fire engine, a pumping appliance, has 100 gallons of water on it. So the water which could be supplied for firefighting was sufficient coming from the actual fire appliance without setting into fire hydrants. It's only when the watering tanks of the appliance are exhausted there is a need to use a fire hydrant. What happened actually, when we set up a forward mobilising control, our focal point was in Jebb Avenue, secondly was in Jebb Avenue up Brixton Hill. The fire engines, which are required to attend the incident, were initially sent to that rendezvous point. So I had anything up to about 15 fire engines at the rendezvous point in Jebb Avenue. It was from there that appliances were ordered to incidents in the Brixton area. Each crew which was sent into the riot area was fully briefed, as fully as I was able to, and also fully debriefed when they returned to the rendezvous point. Their experience was they was being attacked by huge crowds of mainly youths throwing bricks at appliances. We had a number of fire injured, about half a dozen, which had their windscreens shattered through bricks being thrown. We had personnel suffering injuries. In total, there was something like about 14 firemen or fire officers were injured by missiles being thrown at fire engines. No, on each occasion, each time we got a call, a fire engine was mobilised from the rendezvous point to try and negotiate a safe route and to extinguish that fire. There were occasions, like the two public houses, which we just could not get to because of the level of the civil disorder. There was two public houses. One was the Windsor public house, the other one was the George public house, which, as you will see by the photographs, they were destroyed by fire, completely destroyed by fire, because we was not able to attend those areas because of the surrounding hostilities, and secondly because the police were not able to provide us with any protection. The police themselves were extremely busy trying in some form to control those disorders. We managed to put out several fires, the majority of fires. It was only when the hostility was so great that we were prevented from the general public, the rioters, from attending and putting those fires out. The vast majority we did put out. There were some isolated car fires, which I ordered crews, if the fire was in an advanced state and there is no other risk to human life or surrounding property, to let it burn. Because you would see the rioters were setting these cars and vehicles alight, and we were seen to be trying to counter what they was trying to achieve. The reason one let them burn, which is very foreign to a fire service, was simply there would be too great a risk to the crews, the fire engine crews, in staying in that location and trying to put the fire out. Yeah, let me make it clear. The fire service has always been regarded as a completely neutral agent. We have no political or social bias whatsoever. We are normally welcomed into buildings, into somebody's car alight. But on this occasion, the situation was totally the opposite. Because we was trying to put out fires which they wanted to burn, that, we were seen to, be providing them with difficulties. At that stage, I had about 26, 27 years in the job, and I'd never ever experienced that level or any opposition to us putting out fires. We was always most welcome. My main concern was the safety of my firefighters. Recognising early on, firefighters had sustained quite severe injury. Bricks thrown through windscreen, lumps of concrete thrown through windscreens, scaffold poles thrown through windscreens, and hitting the crew is not a healthy situation, obviously. So my main concern was for the safety of my personnel. It was a terrifying situation, but one probably would understand that in the fire service we are consistently going into hostile situations. Under normal circumstances, going to a house fire is a hostile situation. So one is able to absorb that to a certain degree. But on the other end of the scale, this was a totally different situation at Brixton. It was terrifying, but you put that aside and continue to do your job, as I'm sure everybody else there did. No, there was no such training for a riot situation. We had never experienced it before. We didn't expect to experience it. No, there was no training to deal with a riot situation. One made up the procedures as one went along, to be honest, what one thought was best to do. I always, after every incident I go to, let alone a riot situation, I always reflect on it and how could I have done that better? And to be perfectly honest, no. I was satisfied with the procedures, which was very off the back of your hand, proved to be successful. The firemen that were injured, I think there was about 14, maybe 16 personnel which sustained various injuries, from broken limbs. The most severest injury, I would say, was the driver of West Norwood's pump, West Norwood's fire engine, the first appliance, the first fire engine into Roughton Road, where they had a brick scaffold poles, concrete thrown through the windscreen, which unfortunately struck the driver in the chest, and it was thought that he had a fractured spleen and fractured ribs at the time. Fortunately, it turned out it was only severe bruising. I proceeded to the Brixton area about 1730, 1740. I did not return home until 0900, after 0900 hours the following day. But the riot situation had indeed quietened down by about midnight. Things had quieted down quite a lot by midnight. No, it was only one night. It happened over the course of 3 nights. But the most significant was certainly the first night, the 11th of April, the Saturday 11th of April. The following 2 nights, the Sunday and the Monday, it happened but to a much lesser degree. We was prepared for a repeat of what had happened on the Saturday, but it did not. Unfortunately, it did not fortunately come to that fruition. It was very small and sporadic fires here and there. There was not the riot situation which we experienced on the Saturday night. No, I don't think it was because the police had arrested that number of people. There were obviously certain people arrested by the police, but that's for the police to speak about, not myself. How did it return to more normality? I don't really know. Saturday night was certainly the night where we had the main riot situation. I think because of the police, just previous to that particular Saturday, had an operation which they swamped the Brixton area. The Brixton area was an area known for poor housing, overcrowded living conditions, many personnel out of work, and the police had this operation which I believe was called Swamp. And because of all those factors, I think that's what really brought it to a head. But I think what initially started the actual riot was the police attempted to arrest a person in a taxi office in Atlantic Road because of a stabbing incident. And that sparked the riot situation off. The reasons I wouldn't know. No, I don't know why. No. Apart from the reason I've already outlined. Mm. What do I remember seeing? I obviously remember seeing unruly mobs of people. I obviously saw police, which had little protection in those days, trying to bring it under some control. I also remember cars burning, buildings burning. One was very frustrated. One could not do anything about that because of the riot situation. These are things which stick in my mind. No, I cannot recall any approach at all from any member of the public in respect of wanting help. I did try to set up a liaison officer with the police so we could get a better understanding of what was happening in the area. But the police just never had the manpower to provide me with such a liaison officer. Yeah, what I know of that is that at some stage, I'm not sure what stage, the police thought it might be a good idea to put a policeman on each fire engine to escort it into the Brixton area. That I completely dispelled because of attempting to maintain our neutral image. I did not want the general public to see us associated with the police. Who do I feel sorry for? I feel sorry that my firefighters had to suffer so much injury, so much harassment from an unruly mob of people. I feel sorry for the area in general for having to experience and go through that situation. I feel very sorry about that. I think things have certainly changed for the better. There's far better housing now available in the Brixton area. Not as good as it should be, but far better than it was back in those days. I think the unemployment situation has eased. What did I learn? I learned, it came home to me, how flexible a fire service needs to be to deal with all manner of changes of situations. I don't know what else to say actually in respect to that. What did I learn? What did I learn from the Brixton riot situations? It reinforced my already held beliefs that in the fire service you can be called to a whole range of different incidents and circumstances. You never know what you're going to next. However, I did learn what I thought was the best way to deal with the next riot situation, should a next riot situation occur, which I was involved with. Yeah, it was certainly a very, very dramatic situation. But then again, in the fire service, you're presented with a number of dramatic situations throughout your career. Yes, that does stick in your mind, I would say, over and above everything else. But there is still the drama associated with a normal house fire, a factory fire, a car fire. Person's trapped here, person's trapped there. It is all very dramatic being in the fire service. But yes, I must say that was possibly the most dramatic. How my family felt about it, I don't really know, because they never knew. They never knew until they heard something on the news or until I got home the following day. But you don't sort of intermingle your working life with your factory life, or with your family life. At least I don't anyway. It is a distinct separate issue there. Yeah. Certainly there was some concern. The depth of their concern, I don't really know. I can't answer that. Because, as I say, my private life was separate from my working life. In '85, at the time of the riots, I was a Deputy Assistant Chief Officer. In the intervening period between '81 and '85, the brigade had been restructured. It dispensed with their divisions, their 11 divisions, and set up 5 area commands. And I, fortunately, was appointed as the Assistant Chief Officer, the commander of the brigade's South East Command, which was my headquarters then being based at Lewisham. Hence, that's why I was not involved in the subsequent riots. I think not only my local officers, which I had at the time at Clapham in the B Division, but officers throughout the brigade and officers throughout the country learnt a great deal about how to contend with a riot situation, simply because I used to lecture throughout the British Fire Service on my experiences at the Brixton riots. Some of my tips? Yeah, I think, as a result of that, the brigade set up rendezvous points in selected areas throughout the London Fire Brigade area. And I believe other brigades gave a lot of thought to that, or may indeed have done it, set up rendezvous points just in case they had to face a similar situation.
Brilliant.
The police didn't treat us at all. The police were far, far too busy looking after themselves. There was minimal contact with the police, even though I did attempt on many occasions to try and get a police liaison officer. Another thing which we done after riots was to make sure that a fire officer was located inside any police control should there be further situations. No, I think there is some relationship. At the time, I think the majority of firemen, the majority of police officers were white, and the majority in the communities, such as the likes of Brixton, were black. I'm not a racist myself, so I wouldn't really know from that point of view. As you know, I brought Barry along the other day, the first black guy in the London Fire Brigade. I never noticed his colour at all. He was just another fireman to me, a bloody good fireman. But his colour was didn't matter, whether it's red, green, blue, or black, whatever colour. I can honestly and truly say that never enters my head. I think it is deeper than that, but I think possibly an element was certainly that the majority of police were white and the majority of the community in that particular area of London were black. Why people did riot, as I've said before, was because of the social economic situation at the time prevailing throughout Britain, but particularly in the rundown areas of Brixton. And the presence, the heavy presence of the police in the day or so leading up to the riot situation. The George Public House and Atlantic Road, that was completely gutted by fire. Brigade appliances did attend the incident in the early stages, but were driven away before they could fully extinguish the fire. We did, however, return many hours later to fully extinguish it, but in the meantime the pub had been destroyed. One of many car fires. There were numerous fires in cars. The cars, most of them were completely destroyed by fire. Some of those cars were indeed police vehicles. That is some terraced buildings off of Atlantic Road. As you can see, they were completely destroyed by fire. An example of a car fire and the amount of debris there is in a roadway. They were the remains of objects thrown at ourselves and the police. Another shot taken the following morning, which once again shows you the amount of debris which had been held at us and the police during the riots. The plumber merchants off of Riots Road or Atlantic Road, once again severely damaged by fire, The brigade attended in the initial stages but were driven away by the rioting mobs. The brigade returned later to fully extinguish the fire. Just another example. That's Walrus, yeah, where you have Walrus in the background. Once again, a shop with dwellings above, which was completely gutted. That shows a fire situation in the distance there. In the foreground are police officers. As you can clearly see, there was no such thing as riot gear for police officers in those days. They just had their normal wear and apparel. Always have photographers in the fire brigade. Something special. Where there is when there's an arson fire, when we suspect arson, when there is a body lost at a fire, or an unusual situation such as this.
I see.
The officer out on the fire ground can summon the attendance of a brigade photographer. Once again, example of how the police were dressed in those days. Shirt sleeve ordered, some of them. It just shows you there was no protective equipment as such given to the police. In those days, they was wearing their normal undress uniform. Some were even in undress in shirt sleeve order. Another example of the police in their normal wear and apparel. No riot gear as such. Just a picture of Brixton Fire Station, which is located in Gresham Road, Brixton. We call those two appliances, one is a pump ladder and one is a pump, but to the average member of the public, they are just two fire engines. Yeah, I would say fire appliances have obviously improved over the last 30 years like everything else. But I think as a result of the right situation, I made one of my recommendations was that the appliance windscreens be made of laminated glass as opposed to just normal glass. Not just normal glass. As opposed to just reinforced glass. Another picture typical of the remains of buildings which are left after the right situation. That was probably taken the following morning. You see there a police vehicle had been turned over, early stages of the riots. Another example there, three vehicles destroyed by fire. Another picture of the George Public House, taken the following morning, the Sunday morning. As you can see, completely destroyed by fire. There's a picture of Boutique in Cold Harbour Lane, totally destroyed by fire. Picture taken on the Sunday morning, a plumber's merchants with dwellings above, once again completely destroyed by fire. Because it's such a simple way to achieve whatever their objectives were. The mission I would like to put across is for the general public. The general public is to be fully aware that the fire brigade, any fire brigade, is a completely neutral agency. We have no political or social bias whatsoever. We are just there to help people in distress. Yeah, it was disappointing. It was, yeah. Yeah, but of course we were there and we was a uniformed presence. And of course everything was at fever pitch situation that we were just there to be attacked. We was trying to counter what they was trying to achieve. They was trying to destroy buildings. We were trying to prevent those buildings being destroyed. One was obviously very disappointed that the general public was trying to attack the fire service. Yeah, because we are only there. We have no social or political bias whatsoever. We are solely there to help people in distress, to save their lives, their children's lives, to prevent their property from being destroyed by fire. That is our sole purpose. No, I don't believe anyone was. I think those firemen there were only proud to be part of it. They were proud to be part of it.